My name's Greg Scasny. As Ron said, I'm CTO and founder at IntelliThreat Corporation. Little bit about my background, just so you're aware. I've been doing cyber for a very long time. Prior to Blue Shift, I did mostly red team stuff. So I ran red teams, did adversary emulation, penetration testing, those sorts of things. And we built Blue Shift out of that kind of methodology of how to detect real adversaries and what we do. I have a degree in electrical engineering from Purdue. I teach at some cool places. I teach both red team and blue team tactics for launch control engineers and SOC teams at NASA. I teach for MITRE. I teach for the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. Other places I carry a high-level security clearance. All those fun things. So I'm a very technical guy. I have the gift of gab, so you'll hear me talk a lot, and I really enjoy what I do. So I'll try not to keep it trying to go too deeply technical. But if you have technical questions after this, I'm happy to answer any questions you have that I can about our platform and how we do things. We'll kind of lay it out here, so it's pretty easy to understand. Then Dermot will come up after me and tell you about himself afterwards. So today we're going to talk about AI-powered SecOps, some of the things we do with IntelliThreat for Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace, and some other platforms as well. I'm going to show you a demo of one of our newer platforms called IntelliThreat Vision, which we use for compliance and automated penetration testing against those compliance frameworks. Pretty cool. I think so. It'll help a lot of people understand things that are happening in their company and that sort of thing. So briefing is I'm going to talk about some of the realities of SecOps and what we have to do. I'm going to talk about the progression of AI and how that has gone through things, especially in cyber and where we're at now. I'm going to talk about IRAI in particular, which we call IntelliThreat AI, obviously. I'm going to talk about how we do that and the models and things, not super deep, but kind of understanding our philosophy around how we utilize AI safely and how we protect our customers' data, because we're obviously dealing with security logs and security information. And so where you send that data and how you utilize AI is very, very important. Especially to our customers. We're going to talk about how the systems work in general, and so people can understand those sorts of things. We'll talk specifically about some of the things we do with Google Workspace and Microsoft 365, which is the ones we have out right now. And then we'll just kind of finish up with a little quick vision demonstration and talk about how this can help your business if you're an MSSP. So again, if you have questions, I can't see them. Raise your hand, but Ron will be there to see that, and he can ask me questions. I don't mind answering questions live if you have questions about what we do. So the reason we started IntelliThreat is we run a SOC, and we were trying to help solve our own problems a few years ago. The problem is that the amount of logs we're getting, even though people are moving to the cloud and people are moving to different platforms that are not on premise and things like that, it doesn't lessen the amount of security data that we're getting in from a security operations standpoint. Trying to find people, and this, I know this says Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace, but across the board, if you're running any kind of security operations, the amount of data you're getting in just keeps getting larger. Even for small clients, if you're doing it properly, you're ingesting, hundreds of thousands of logs a day, and trying to do that at scale, trying to do that 24/7, trying to keep analysts interested, trying to stop alert fatigue, which is real, is a problem. And it's been a problem for years. And when machine learning first started coming out and LLMs first started coming out, we were like, okay, how can we utilize this technology to help, not only do a better job for our customers, but lessen some of that alert fatigue on our analysts, make sure we're not missing things, make sure we have complete coverage and all those sorts of things. Because the problem is when you don't do that, you don't do it well, the ramifications are real and they cost money. And that's what you can see at the bottom there. The average detect and contain, the number's going down, thank God. But still, when you look at some of the data breach investigations reports, it's been a very long time to take that what they call dwell time, the time from initial compromise to the time you detect that compromise. Adversaries are getting quicker because of AI. So the time from that initial compromise to their action on objectives, when they actually start doing things in an environment, is starting to shrink. And so that's a problem for defenders, right? We use that dwell time against adversaries. But by using AI, they can go quicker. So the only way we're going to fight that and win is we have to use AI ourselves. We have to have that thing going on. And it really comes down to the cost, right? So that $4.8 million is the average cost of a data breach for small businesses. That number hasn't changed a whole lot. It's very expensive when you have a breach. And so if you can detect and respond to things and isolate things very, very quickly, that cost goes down exponentially very, very quickly. And that's the major outcome that we're trying to avoid, is having a breach that costs money. It's going to happen, right? So I always talk about the fact that you're not going to stop a determined adversary from getting into your environment. It's going to happen at some point. It just the targets move too quickly. The surface is very, very large that you have to defend. Sometimes you don't even know what you have. So sometimes it's going to happen. But if you detect and respond to that very, very quickly, and we're doing that with AI, the cost of that goes down dramatically. Sometimes it's not even a reportable event. So this is the problem we're trying to solve with the products and services that we're offering with IntelliThreat. And so if you want to look at kind of the history, I know it's a brief history of AI and cyber and AI in general, you can kind of see that's what we have here. Back in 2023, when AI first was people were getting into it, it was the chat bot, right? It was go on to Chat GPT, talk to it. And that's how a lot of people still use AI, but there's so much more to it that people don't realize. And maybe they do. But from a security perspective, things are moving quickly. The next year after that, we had kind of Copilot, which is now you get information from your environments. You're looking at things. You can ask AI to in a copy and paste type of scenario to look at things or maybe look at some logs. And then everybody's heard of agentic AI, right? So that was last year. It was like, okay, now we have these AI agents and they're able to go and do things somewhat autonomously. But what we're moving to is what we call the scaffold of the harness, right? So what that means is it's the kind of programmatic operations around what agents and AI do. And this makes a huge difference. And what people need to realize is that everybody hears about the latest and greatest models when it comes to AI. OpenAI released this model, and it's 16 trillion parameters. That's not, they don't have one that large, but these frontier models with these massive parameters are trained on this massive amount of data, and it's the latest and greatest. And honestly, that's all well and fine, but that doesn't make that model better at doing anything than anything else. What actually makes models work better is the guidance and the scaffold around how those agents and things work with a model. And that's not me saying that. You can go online, you can see there's lots of studies done where they take the same exact model, they run two different scaffold or harnesses around those models, and they get very, very different results. Some of the results are bad, like their accuracy is down to that 46%, which you see that, and then it kind of jumps up to 80% using a different harness. That's where we're at, and that's what we use. Our platforms are all based around the scaffold that we use around models and agents and what we allow them to do. That's that's what makes AI both a utility and a partner in what you're doing with cybersecurity. So if you start hearing those things, scaffold harnesses and those sorts of things, you hear me use those two. Those two terms are kind of interchangeable. That's what we mean by that. It's the guidelines and the program around utilizing LLMs and things like that to do things that are useful, and how you take those outputs and re-put them back in and ask more questions to get down to the data that you really want to see and have analyzed without having to have a human do it. So be on the lookout for that's, I'm sure many of you have heard of that, but that's where we're at right now when it comes to doing things with AI. And it's amazing what it can do. Is it's a tool just like anything else, and if you're not using that tool to better your security, you're going to be left behind. Unfortunately, you're going to be vulnerable to attacks and things like that you're not going to be able to respond to because you're just not going to see it quick enough. And that's the biggest problem we're trying to solve. So we'll talk about our IntelliThreat AI, so I can meet IntelliThreat AI. What we've built and what we continue to build is this agent scaffold around many different platforms. So there's two methodologies you can talk about when you want to use AI in a security context for an organization, right? You can go all in and say, I want to look at all my data, and this is not a bad thing. I'm not poo-pooing that idea, but jump all in, head first, deep end of the ocean. I want to throw everything at it I can, and then figure out what it tells me. Or you can start looking at individual things, and then use another scaffold to piece those together, so you get a holistic view. we've taken the latter approach. AI is still relatively new, right, when it comes to things in security, and I use that in quotes because it's really not. But everybody in security is doing AI stuff. But to really gain the trust of customers and let them understand how this can help them, very few are going to want to jump in the deep end of the ocean. Some do, and that's great. I don't think that's a bad. Sometimes it can be bad, but sometimes you just want to put the toe in, right? See how the water feels. Make sure there's no sharks in there. Those sorts of things. And so we've really built a modular type system that we can pick things like Microsoft 365 if you're a Microsoft 365 shop, like Google Workspace if you're a Workspace shop, if you're using an MNDR, if you're using our XDR, which utilizes Suricata and Wazoo and those sorts of things. We can put those pieces in kind of one at a time, so you can test the waters, so you can see what happens with it, and then as you add more pieces of IntelliThreat to your organization, they work together. So one may be looking at your Microsoft 365, and it's very specific information it looks at, right? So it looks at the way things happen in Microsoft 365 and sends alerts, and then maybe you have a SIM that we support as well. Now those two, when you put them together, they can cross correlate information, right? So the Microsoft 365 can ask the SIM, hey, have you seen anything with this particular user that I'm having an issue with? And the SIM agents for IntelliThreat can answer back, and those sorts of things. So it's really, you can build the platform as you go and as your comfort level sees, right? So you don't have to, again, you don't have to jump in the deep end of the ocean. I think that's an important differentiator. One, it allows us to fine tune the specific platforms that we're utilizing our scaffold for. You run this problem of jack of all trades, master of none, right? So if you're really broad in what you're trying to do, again, AI is it can gather a lot of information, so it's really good at that. But we tend to be more specific in the platforms that we pick, right? So we look at very specific things, very specific anomalies, very specific user behaviors, those sorts of things within each platform, and then we can put those together, right? So I think it's a little better methodology. But not that either is wrong. I'm just saying that I think our methodology is obviously better when it comes to doing those things, and especially for resellers and those sorts of things as well. So I'll talk about our private AI and some of those sorts of things. But the nice thing about the way it does work is it is very plain language. So when it responds or when it talks to our customers, this is not an interactive type platform where you're going to ask it questions and try to figure out what should I ask the AI or what is this. It does all that for you. It actually acts like a level 1 analyst, almost a little like close to level 2 analyst. No, it understands when there's an anomaly or when there's an alert that comes through. It will correlate the information for you. It will pull all that information out. It will give you the root cause of why that alert happened. It will tell you what you need to do to fix it. If it's allowed to, as part of that scaffold, it will respond and tell you, and I'll get into that too. It will respond and tell you what it did to actually respond to that. And that's all in very plain language, which is important. We want to be able to let teams utilize this who may not be security professionals. And that's, security professionals are, one, expensive, and two, they're hard to find. So we're utilizing these tools to help replace, and not from a job perspective, realize no one really wants to be a level 1 SOC analyst. Let's just be honest with you. Those guys do. They're usually junior seniority type employees. They sit in front of a pane of glass or a computer monitor all day. They look at a bunch of alerts, which 90% are probably false positives anyways. They have to correlate that information. They write a report about it. It's monotonous, and it burns people out very, very quickly. What they would rather do is take those curated alerts and start threat hunting, right? Looking for that deeper level meaning behind what the AI is telling it. Threat hunting in that environment to see what's going on. Those sorts of things are exciting. Those are things that I've been doing this for 20 some years. And I still love doing those things. So that's where we want to put the people where they're best utilized at, and let the AI do the grunt work that no one wants to do, right? So one of the things we do with our AI is we don't use OpenAI or Anthropic, any of those providers, because we are dealing with security data. I understand that you can have agreements, and I'm not going to talk poorly about what they do with data, but you are entrusting them with your security data, and that they're not going to save those queries or those prompts or use your security data to train a model. All that makes me very nervous as a cybersecurity professional. From our standpoint, we run a SOC. We have access to all that information anyways. It usually, all that information is private within our infrastructure. We use our own private AI. We have LLMs that sit, for multiple different things, but like for our XDR product, we have LLMs that actually sit on the machine that does the analysis of their logs. We call them cyber threat analysis nodes or CTANs. So we run very small CPU only models that can go through and right there on the edge, triage information, look at things, make determinations initially without ever leaving the customer's environment. Then if it needs more powerful models, we have our own servers that sit in our facility. Our facility is in Fort Myers, Florida. It's a top secret cleared facility. You can't just walk in there. And we're part of NVIDIA's Inception program. So we have a very nice suite of GPU servers that we utilize. It all stays within our infrastructure, never goes out and sends to any third-party APIs or anything like that. Everything is logged, and I'll talk about that from an auditing perspective. So this does a couple things for us. Now, we had to make obviously an initial investment, even with NVIDIA's help, in GPU infrastructure. But I'm sure everybody's aware the cost of tokens for public AI is going up, right? They've been subsidized with investor money, and as they need to now become profitable, the cost of sending information to models is going up. Newer models are much more conversational too, so the thinking, the reasoning that models use, so all that uses tokens, all that costs API. It's very difficult when you don't use your own infrastructure to be able to price it accordingly to customers, because you have this variable of how many tokens is it going to use, how many alerts are going to get this month. You don't know. You don't know the complexity of what those alerts are going to be. So how long is that model run going to take? How long is all that kind of stuff? Leads to this very cost and variability, which means it just end up costing your end customers more. So we don't have that effect, right? We can use tokens as long as we want. It's our own hardware, it just runs, right? So I don't have to worry about those sorts of things. And that makes a big difference. And, even though we're not frontier models, again, remember what I said, it's the model, you don't need frontier models to do a really good job with cybersecurity data. What you need is a really good harness or scaffold with that, which is what we have. So we can utilize, a little smaller models that run, a couple 100 GB models that we use to triage these things and keep that data private, and we can price it accordingly with our customers. It also helps the latency and things like that, because we control the networks that these things run on. So that now, is that to say that you couldn't use a frontier model if you so desire? It's just a setting. You could, if you want to pay those token costs. We don't have any customers that do, but obviously it is an option if customers want to do that. We don't have any that do at this time. So you heard me say in the beginning about being able to detect and respond very quickly is super important, right? That's the difference between a very costly data breach if you don't detect and respond, and they're in there for a week or two, and all your data gets encrypted or it gets stolen or whatever their action on objectives are. This is what our scaffold does. It does the detection piece of it, and we do that in a few different ways for different platforms. We have very specific rules that get ran across all that data. We call them playbooks. And so these are traditional type detections. There are thousands and thousands of traditional detections that have been out there for forever, and there's no reason to throw those away. But what we can do is run them very, very quickly. And anytime something hits a traditional detection, we give it to the AI to do all the other things you see here, to triage, investigate, respond, and report. So they are doing the jobs that our SOC analysts do right now, right? So it's taking an alert that would come up, it's going to triage it, it's going to investigate it, it's going to respond, and I'll talk about that here in a second, and then it's going to generate a report to tell you what it did. But LLMs can do a lot more than that, right? So again, given the correct harness or scaffold, they can detect anomalies on their own. If you give them enough information in context, you give them access to some documentation, right, in forms of what's normal in this customer's environment, geography related, what their normal IP addresses are, what sites they go to, all those sorts of things. It can make determinations on its own of things that are anomalous, and then generate investigations on its own. And we do that as well. And that's actually where we find some of the more hard to detect attacks that we're seeing with it is in that anomaly detection. It'll detect things, applications that have too wide a privilege or someone giving privileges that they shouldn't. It'll detect applications that are going to reach out and do things that they haven't done in the past. It'll detect users that are doing things that they haven't done in the past or accessing information they haven't accessed in the past. All those things that may or may not, they're kind of on that hairy edge, but are things that from a security standpoint you want to know about and you want to investigate. Because that can be that first signal that something is wrong, right? Whether that's an external adversary doing, or what's really difficult is an insider threat, right? So it has helped us with our insider threat programs tremendously. Some talked about how we detect and triage and all that. Now the response piece, right? This is what gets people a little bit uneasy. You're going to let the AI respond in my environment. What if it does something, crazy, which is a valid concern. I'm not making light of that concern because, truth be told, an LLM could say your tenant is compromised, and so the next best action to immediately stop the compromise is to delete your tenant. We don't want it to do that, right? While that will absolutely stop the compromise, it's also going to put you down, and cause huge disruption to the business. So as part of that scaffold that I talk about, and that harness, is we programmatically limit the responses that it can do. It can't just do whatever it wants to do. It has a set program that allows it to select actions, and those actions are things that we would allow at a level 1 SOC analyst to do. Things like blocking users or IP addresses, suspending an account, triaging, those sorts of level 1 things. It's all it can do. It programmatically just can't do anything else, even if it wants to. And this is also an opt-in thing. Now, obviously, we suggest everybody does opt into the response piece of it because it happens in literally seconds. But we understand people's trepidation in not wanting AI to make changes in their environment. So we do a few other things I'll talk about. We have these what we call break glass accounts, just in case. It's an account that won't get anything applied to it, so you can always log in and reverse things if we need to, and those sorts of things. But so we try to make it as easy as possible. But again, we are very safety conscious when it comes to how we allow AI to respond in environments. And again, what it can do are all things that are reversible too. But the benefit of allowing to do that is, again, you're able to detect and stop something in literal seconds. So, and that's what it really comes down to. And then it reports, right? So it always gives this nice plain language report. It will tell you exactly what it did. It will tell you exactly what responses it took. It will reason and tell you why, give you a root cause, all those sorts of things, and all that's stored, right? So that's stored for full audit trail responsibility and those sorts of things. You always have the evidence in your hand to do those sorts of things. And this just runs. It just runs. These agents run all the time, 24/7. They're happy to look at the same alert if it happens to come in, 17 times. Doesn't matter. The AI doesn't complain about doing the same job over and over and over again. And that's what they're designed to do. So it works very, 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 very well. So we talked about, we have this right now for Microsoft 365. If people are interested, we can schedule a demo and do all those sorts of things. So I couldn't even fit on the screen, all the things that it actually does or can do, but it looks over anything that is in your Microsoft 365, regardless of the license level you have, right? So, if you're on a very small license level, it still works well. If you're on the biggest license level and you're using Defender and XDR and all those other things, it doesn't matter. It looks at all that information regardless and makes all those determinations for you. So again, the more tools you have in there, obviously the better that it works. But it will work with all the things you have inside Microsoft 365. Same thing with Google Workspace. Depending on what you have in there, it works against all those, everything that's inside Google Workspace, depending on what you have inside there. So again, the backend scaffold is not much different for what you see with Google Workspace or Microsoft 365. The difference really comes down to understanding what it does on an anomaly perspective, so understanding the differences between those things, and then what we call the playbooks are different between Google and Microsoft 365, those traditional detections that we still want to use. But it all actually works exactly the same, so it's pretty easy. Like I talked about, this is something that we've had happen, so you can see, like, it was literally within 2 seconds from the time we detected something that was analyzed, correlated, and contained within Microsoft 365 environments. And this is what we call no human in the loop. We call it a human on the loop. So what that means is if you allow us to do the response piece of it, all this action just happens, and it just tells you about it at the end. Now, that being human on the loop means you can see that. You can go reverse it if you need to. We haven't had to reverse any of them ever, which is good, but it doesn't require human interaction to be able to do those things. And I think that's very important. Again, it's why we built the response mechanisms the way we have, is so that way we can take the human. There's a couple different types of AI. Agent harness is one they call, again, human in the loop, which means that you have to have a human verify and select the actions wants to do, or you have human on the loop, which they just observe what happens, which is what we do. I think that's important. This is what I talked about in the back. Again, what we do from a guardrail perspective. Again, it can't do things like delete your CEO's account, those sorts of things. Everything's threshold based. You can see that in the dashboards and things like that. You can see exactly what it does. We do have what's called break glass, which is, again, that's an account that nothing gets applied to, so you can log in there and do things. We do obviously least privilege access. We try to make this very easy for people to install, especially in cloud environments. It's basically just a script that you run. It sets up all the things it needs from either Google or Microsoft, so that way we get the right logging information back to the system. It will send us basically an API key in the tenant ID, depending on which one you're doing. It encrypts and sends that to us, so we can program that in our system, and you're off and running. We really try to make it easy to get it running quickly for everybody. Everything is audited, so we do keep in our consoles, we keep a year's worth of data inside there, so you can go back and you can see every alert that's ever happened. You don't just see the alert, like you're going to get alerts that can go to either your SIM, they could be emailed to you. These are what we call actionable alerts, right? So things that are actionable are sent to you. If you subscribe to our SOC services, they're also sent to our SOC. But there's all kinds of other things that happen in the environment. It's analyzing things all the time, and you can see all that information in, and I can even show you real quick. You can see all that information in our console. Like if I look here, this is our console for it. So this is a demo console, but you can see all the alerts and all that kind of stuff. But you can see, like, these are actionable things that would have been sent out. But these are all the anomalies that it detected. Now, it's not going to send you all these, but we have, again, historical auditable logs of everything that's happened in the environment. Same thing with the playbook alerts. These are every playbook alert that's happened over whatever, this is the last 24 hours, but you can go back in time and pull this information up. You can see anything that's happened from a response perspective, right? So these are IP blocks. These are done against threat intelligence, which is mostly what you see happens. So you can see when it was the timestamp, what action it was, what it did. It's all in there for you to see. So it makes it very easy from a auditing standpoint. So so I'll talk about this new product we have. It's a little bit different than what I'm talking about from the detection response piece. Again, we came up with this product to help ourselves, right? So we're going through both CMMC or NIST 800-171 attestation and SOC 2 Type 2 for auditing and all that kind of stuff. And really needed a place to say, we have to get our evidence in here. We have to test against this stuff. Where can I keep my evidence? How can I verify that evidence? How can I then test and prove that I'm doing those sorts of things? So we said, well, let's just build a system that does that. And as we started building it, we're like, well, we can add even more frameworks. We can do all this. We can put a full pen testing thing behind there. I mean, that's what IntelliThreat Vision is. And so it is a compliance based penetration testing platform that is autonomous, right? So you just kind of tell it what to do. I'll show it to you here real quick. I'm going to make sure I give Dermot enough time. But this is a tool that is, again, it helps us with compliance. It helps with doing it's an automated penetration test. You can tell it how aggressive you want to be with it. It's really a really neat tool that we're going to be giving to people. So this is Vision. I need to log into it because it's been sitting here for a while. So just give me a quick second. Let me grab password for this. All right. So again, I won't go through the full demonstration, but just to kind of understand what it is, we have both engagements and compliance when it comes to using this. And so what compliance is you can pick whatever compliance framework. There's 20 some, 22, I think, different ones inside here. So you can pick whatever compliance framework that you want to do. Let's say you want to do the CIS controls just for the heck of it. This lists all the controls for you, right? So you can have these controls in here. You see something that failed. So what you can do is you can drop your evidence in here to say, okay, I have evidence for this particular control. I don't know what it is, but you can browse a file. You can upload, a PDF into here. I don't even know what that was. It's not going to pass because this is not even normal for this. But what it will do is it will go out, send our AI, and then analyze that document and tell you if that document is good enough to pass that control. So you can be sure that when you upload these things and your evidence is there, that evidence suffices to pass that particular security control, right? So this says, nope, this is a notice of commencement on the house that I'm building, so it has nothing to do with this. So it said, you're crazy. This has nothing to do with with this security control. So that doesn't pass, right? So it doesn't pass for that requirement. So you can do that all by yourself. We have another feature that you can upload and let it figure it out on its own. So you can upload a document for either one framework or all the frameworks, and then it will tell you if that particular document passes and where it goes. Now, the great thing about this is if you're trying to do multiple security controls or multiple different compliance frameworks, it doesn't just do one. If you say all frameworks, it will parse this and put it wherever it needs to go. And same thing with the evidence you upload to one. If you upload a control and it maps to another control across any of these frameworks, it automatically populates all those for you. So you're not doubling any work, right? It's very cool. It helps, like, again, especially if you're doing like NIST 800 172, which is CMMC level 3. If you've already done NIST 800 171, 90% of those controls map over to NIST. There's only a few controls that are different between 170 and 172. So you're not redoing that work, right? So, and then you can generate reports for that. I only have an engagement report, but you can generate compliance reports. So it'll tell you what you need and all that kind of stuff, which is really cool. Then what you can do is you can have an engagement. So this will do a pen test against those particular frameworks. So you can come in here, you can tell it, 2026 infrastructure audit, whatever. I don't know, call it whatever, doesn't matter. And so we're going to do what's called a compliance-driven pen test. So it's going to look at controls that you select for whatever framework you want, and it's going to pen test your environment against there. You can tell it the scope, so you can put in, 1 and 2, whatever network scope you have. I'm just going to make one up here, 24. You can add multiple ones in there depending on where you're getting it from. You can test if you have external things you want to test. You can do that as well. You can exclude things you don't want to test. So if you have sensitive things in your environment, you can exclude those things. You can exclude accounts, all that kind of stuff. You can pick, like, say, I want CMMC level 2 and this 171, they're the same thing, whatever. So these are the two I want to test against. You can tell it how aggressive you want it to be. You want it to do it fast and normal. You want to do any kind of out of scope exploitation. You can always ask what you should do. You can provide credentials. So if you want to do credentialed scanning and those sorts of things, you can. It's a better test if you do those sorts of things. And then you can hit go. I'm not gonna do that because it will actually start. It'll actually start pen testing my network here. But I have run it here, right? So this has its own agent harness that it uses. It will plan out the complete test on those controls. It will do reconnaissance. It'll enumerate. It will do that multiple passes. So it finds everything it can. It'll validate. It will try to exploit if you so choose it, and then it'll give you the report when you're done. And the report comes out and says, like, here's a pen test report. Shows you everything you need to know from things that are critical, high, medium, low, and informational. You can export it to a PDF. You can pick the theme you want, and then it will export a PDF that you can give to an auditor, right? So really cool platform. Again, it was born out of necessity for what we needed to do. And we will be we're adding other things into here as well from a cyber insurance perspective too. So you'll see that coming here pretty soon. So we're pretty excited about Vision and what it does. I think it's going to be going to help a lot of people out. So what this kind of gets you from, if you're an MSSP, right? So the nice thing about security stuff, it's sticky. By we can help you recruit new clients, because obviously we're doing this on you don't have to jump in the ocean, right? Again, the whole toe dip thing I talked about, I think is important when it comes to helping partners reach the kind of the customers and have that kind of reach across different platforms that customers are going to have. It helps reduce costs. Part of what we do use, and even in our XDR, is open source, so we're able to keep the cost down for a lot of the things we do. Again, we integrate with tools. I talked about that briefly, but the information where this gets sent out, if you already have tools, if you're already using a ticketing system or a PSA or a SIM, we can send those alerts to anything. It doesn't matter. You don't have to log into our interfaces to do that. We do provide the interfaces for customers, but those alerts can actually go anywhere. So it can integrate right within your workflow. Again, we're automating that level 1 SOC perspective, even a little bit harder. Again, if you run a SOC, this is going to help your analysts, so they're not sitting in front of that pane of glass all day, which is a pain, obviously. Again, we're trying to shrink that dwell time with all this fun stuff. And again, if you're not using AI, I don't think your business is going to grow when it comes to do this. So we do offer some trials and things like that, and partner programs for certain things. We get you a hold of our I'm not a sales guy, I'm just I'm a tech guy. So there's things we can do for that side of thing as well. So that's my presentation. I went a little bit over what I thought I was going to do, which is kind of happens. So but again, if you have questions, I will stop sharing my screen, and we can answer questions either at the end, or you can get a hold of me or our sales staff afterwards, and I'll happily answer any questions around our platforms and what we do.